Change isn't just coming, it's already here. This is Ask for Change podcast, hosted by leadership expert Meridith Powell, brings you weekly conversations with leaders and experts who are redefining success in a world of disruption. Let's begin today's journey and turn uncertainty into your competitive advantage.
Let's start today's journey and turn uncertainty into your greatest competitive advantage. I am really excited today. I've got a great guest, probably one of the most accomplished guests I have had on the program. I want to welcome to the show Dr. Cynthia Bentzen-Mercer. Gosh, Cynthia, you are a PhD, an MBA, BCC. You've got your work in human resources, and you are also a best-selling author of, I want to talk about the 7-minute pivot today, but also your work just in general of helping people really learn to manage and use disruption. So first of all, welcome to the show.
Meredith, thank you so much for having me. I'm so excited to be here this morning.
Oh, great. Well, I always like to start with having our guests tell the audience just a little bit about themselves. I mean, you have such an interesting journey, and I'd just like to open up there.
Thank you. Yeah. I think like a lot of people, I sort of happened into my career journey. It was not as intentional, which is actually thematic of what I now work with clients on is intentionality. Started as a broadcasting major, but fell in love with business early in my career. Landed in human resources a little accidentally and fell in love with business first and then actualizing business through people. So always said I'm a business person first and a human resources professional by choice. Fascinated with people, how they think, feel, and behave, which led me down really the path of studying social psychology and behavioral science and positive psychology. Had the beautiful privilege of, for about 30 years, serving in corporate environments in the C-suite, multiple industries. And a couple of years ago, as circumstances would have it, changed. Life is messy. Found the situation where I had a crossroads. I could either figure out how to stay in the corporate environment or accelerate what was intended to be my encore plan 3 to 5 years from now, which was authoring books and keynote speaking and coaching executives. And so that's where I landed. A little bit of serendipity and a lot of hard work.
I'm sure a lot of hard work. So interesting. I came to the whole human capital area the exact same way. I started all out in business. I was really good at strategy and sales. And then all of a sudden it occurred to me, if you can't get people to buy in, if you can't get people to engage, then the best strategy in the world, the best product is completely worthless. So that leads me to, and I want to talk about the 7-minute pivot. I want to talk about the book you've got behind you now near next. But I think I would be remiss if I didn't ask this question, is that we are now living in a world of AI. I mean, I just spoke at a conference yesterday, and I probably was one of the only speakers on the stage not speaking about artificial intelligences. And I sat there watching program after program. I think, gosh, since I started listening to AI presentations a year ago, I can't believe how much is advanced. Where does that leave human capital? Where does that leave relationships? Where does that leave engagement?
I love that question because I think that is the absolute essence to how individuals, the person listening, and organizations can future-proof their careers and their people portfolios. Because I think about it this way, and through research and really studying the data, and like you, that's not where I lend most of my time, is in the AI automation space, right? But here's what we know. What we know is that computers, technology are going to take on the cognitive load. They're going to be able to take on the things that we used to have to memorize. We used to have to study and hold in our brains. Even some of the skills will be automated. What I don't believe will be automated are what back in the early days, Meredith, you and I would refer to as soft skills, which always
Yeah.
bothered me, right? But it's
Yeah.
compassion and empathy and connectivity and deeper problem solving and conceptualization. How do you, take random thing and pull them together to make sense of things? And then from a change perspective, getting people on board with doing things differently. I think a robot or a computer would be hard pressed to help individuals change the way they think, feel, and behave in a really large way. So for me, not only is it important to the individual that they understand their own human capital and what they bring that is uniquely human. What is your uniquely human advantage? And then my new book, which is coming out February 3rd, Human Capital Investment Strategy, really is the answer to that. It's, listen, leaders, you should definitely be investing and monitoring your financial capital, which we do in spades. Your tech stack, which has become more and more where a lot of focus and financial energy is being placed. But how are you focusing and future readying your human capital, your people portfolio? And so I believe that the companies and the leaders that are thinking about that now will be ready for 2030. I don't know about you, but 4 years goes by like that.
Oh, I just feel like you blink and it goes by so fast. I could not agree more. I really think that the soft skills, will just keep going with that language, are going to become more and more important than they've ever become, because you use all of this technology to increase your ability to be customer facing, client facing, team facing. And it's interesting. I think we're at a time when those skills are kind of dying on the, dying on the vine. There just isn't as much attention paid to them. And I think they're really going to, go on steroids. So you have these 3 books, and you have the one coming out in February. Well, when it comes out in February, I want to have you back on. I really want to focus on that one. But I want to talk a little bit about the 7-minute pivot, and I want to talk about now, near, next. What I found so interesting about now, near, next, so controversial, for lack of a better way to put it, is that it isn't about working hard, right? It's about what you explain in the book. And then 7-minute pivot, in a nutshell, I'm sure there's a lot more to it, but in essence, it's about taking charge of the shifts and the changes and the things that you want in your life and making them happen, rather than allowing all that change happening to you. So whichever book you really want to discuss first, I'm interested in your methodology behind them, your thought process behind them, and what inspired you to write each book.
Yeah. So so to clarify, and you, I think, are foreshadowing, the 7-minute pivot is a framework and a practice which really evolved out of Now, Near, Next. So it's not yet a book.
Okay,
But
it should be a book.
where you're going. I love where you're going, Meredith. I do think it's my 3rd book. And so I think perhaps you're foreshadowing something for me. So Now, Near, Next, my first book, was really focused on global research of studying ambitious professional women, as I said, around the world. And so it started with women. And so for the gentlemen listening, don't tune out yet, because there's something for you, I promise. But we studied women from 25 to 65, 4 race ethnicities, 5 countries, 900 years of experience of our qualitative research, et cetera. Really deep research. And here's what we found universally, is that women in particular, some point along their 3 to 4 decade career, become restless, stuck, stagnant, right? And when we got underneath that as to the why, it was this feeling unactualized. They felt like, I have more talent to give, I have more gifts to offer, I have more to do. And our solution was not to wag a finger at society or cultural norms or men making decisions, et cetera, but was to say, what was also universal is these women admitted that they were not intentional in their career path. So they likened their success to right place, right time, great boss, serendipity, you pick the thing, but they did not intentionally plan ahead for their career journey. And so that really became the focus around Now You're Next and allyship. How do we get women in particular to be more intentional, to start working on your future today? Not when the kids go off to school, graduate college, right? Significant other gets their dream job today. So do your day job with excellence, but be thinking about planning for and making incremental steps toward whatever that aspirational goal is. Lateral move, promotion, job change, start my own business, serve on a board, whatever your aspirational goal is. From that, something that was a small spark is that we would say, listen, everybody has at least 7 minutes, right? It's more than 5, it's less than 10. You can find 7 minutes to be intentional about working on your future. That really took hold and had there was an appetite with men and women just around this 7 minutes. I can do something that is incremental pivot towards something different. And what blossomed, Meredith, from that was how do I take this notion of 7 minutes and really empower people to make change, but it had to be actionable. So what it's not is it's not meditation. I'm a fan, but it's not that. It's not your spiritual daily devotional, right? Again, not to dismiss that. This is additive because this is really taking action. It's saying, what right now is holding me back, this moment today, journaling about that, setting a clock, because we know neurologically it puts us in sort of a cognitive clarity, right? Setting a timer, removing distractions. What is standing in my way, the barrier to my aspirational next? Journaling about that and asking yourself why at least 3 times. Why?
Mm-hmm.
Because otherwise we come up with, well, I don't have time, right? Minute, 30 seconds in, you're like, I'm done. I don't have time. That's why, right? But when you say, well, why? Well, because of this, this, and this. Well, why? And you dig underneath it. And then by the end of the 7 minutes, you ask yourself, what is one small thing, small, that I can do today to slightly move toward that aspirational next? It also could be to find more joy in my life, to feel less in conflict, right? You choose your prompt, but at the end of the day, you have to choose that one tiny actionable thing that you're committed to doing that day to move yourself in a slightly new direction.
Making that progress and making it in baby steps. So I'm curious, when you did the research, did you find any particular reason or commonality or theme as to why women are not intentional about their careers?
Yeah, that's a great question. Yes, overwhelmingly, women are conditioned to put our heads down, work hard, and wait to get tapped. Now think about this. If we think about this from a social psychology perspective, in school back in the day, and I'm going to generalize, right? Because there's exceptions to everything, but based on data and research, when we think about little girls and little boys in school, right, we raise our hand to ask the question. Little girls generally are more likely to sit still in their chair, to raise their hand, to be quiet and do their work and get their stars. Little boys, generally speaking, a little more restless, a little more vivacious, etc. When we move into the corporate environment, into the organizational system, women continue to be given this, put your head down, work hard. When it's your turn, you'll get tapped. Little boys become young men who are used to looking up and looking forward and putting their aspirations into the universe. They're also conditioned to be providers, right? They have a natural competitive spirit. So do many, if not most women. But here's the bigger difference. Statistically, women are still carrying the lion's share of the load at home, whether it's health decisions or home care decisions, whatever it is, whether you have children or don't. So it's a convenient alternative, right? So Meredith, if you say to me, Cynthia, just put your head down, work hard, your work will pay for itself, you'll get tapped when it's time. I go, great. It's one less thing. I can just work hard and then I can pour into everybody around me. And so we dutifully do that. And then at some point we look up and we're like, I'm still sitting in the same seat, doing the same job. This amount of time has passed, and all guys around me have raced on through. And here's what I'd say to the gentleman listening. This is not an indictment of you all. We need to steal a page out of your playbook.
No kidding.
Right? We need to be looking up and looking forward. When we talk to women, the first thing they say is, but we don't have time. And so thus the 7-minute pivot, right? 2,555 minutes a year, it's 7 minutes a day, can move you in a dramatically different direction toward a new destination.
Yeah, I found this, I mean, that was my story. I believed when I went to work, if I worked hard, somebody would notice. And then when they didn't, I believed I should work harder. And then when I still didn't get noticed, I got very passive aggressive, which was kind of the nail in my own coffin in my career, until I woke up and I noticed that the guys around me asked for what they wanted. They didn't care if they didn't get it, they would ask again. I mean, it was such a, like you said, take a page out of there. It changed my life when I realized that nobody should care about my career, more than I do. And once I did that, it made all the difference in the world. I joke all the time from the stage. I tell this story that one of the biggest arguments my husband and I used to have is the fact that my husband is a wonderful man. He is funny, he is adventurous, but he is not romantic. He is the last person buying the last card Valentine's Day every single year. He thinks it's funny. I would get very, very upset. And finally, I took a page out of that book and I just wrote down every romantic thing I could think of to do. And I put it in a little jar and it sits in our kitchen. And once a month, he pulls something out of that jar and does it. And I pretend to be surprised. And it has changed everything. We no longer have that argument, but it is the thing of, if you are not getting what you need, we
Right.
interpret it as something crazy rather than just asking. I am curious though, having coached a lot of executive women myself, when I ask the question of executive women, what do you want? Far too often, I have found, I'm curious if you have, women are so focused on everybody else. And the longer they've been doing it, they've completely lost sight of what it is that they want.
100%, 100%. I can't tell you the number of women, executive women that I coach. And we studied this too, the loyalty. There's such a deeper sense of loyalty. And again, I don't say that as an indictment or a judgment of men, but women get very connected. They don't want to leave their team. They don't want to disappoint someone else. And so they're focused. They'll stay in organizations that are not serving them, that are not allowing them to live into their full gifts and talents, that are not allowing them to really fully actualize, because of a loyalty to the culture, a loyalty to the boss, a loyalty to the team, etc. And those are difficult conversations, because we really have to unpack how is that serving you, and how is that adversity, and how much of that is fear of the unknown, of change, etc., and how much of that is truly loyalty and dedication. Because I'm curious, but I find with a number of them that when we really get underneath the thing that's underneath the thing, it's more to do with the fear of change.
Yes. Yeah, I think that as well. I mean, they're so comfortable in the role that they're in, and it's the fear of change, I think, combined with the fact of fear of failure. They feel so confident in the area they're in. The other thing I think is really interesting is I think women fall victim to this idea that because I have to manage so much at the home, because I have kids and because I have this, that I need to stay in the role I'm in, not understanding that the further you advance, the more flexibility you have in your schedule. I mean, I always tell young women that. I'm like, if you have a lot on your plate, maybe you've got aging parents, maybe you've got kids, maybe you just have a lot to do. You got to understand that the further you go up the ladder, the more ability you're going to have to do that. Not only mention the fact that you're going to have more money to get the help and support that you need.
Yeah, that's brilliant. I actually had not thought about it in that way. I think that's such a powerful and important input, and something to think about. The other thing is, I think about men and allies and others, people that love these women, and sort of the what's in it for me, because it can feel like it can feel like a conversation that's sort of exclusive, right? The whole thing is to not be exclusive, and yet it can feel that way. But when you look at the economic impact, when you look at what's happening to dual income families, what's happening in those situations, there's a lot of reasons why the men and women who support and love these ambitious professional women want to be a part of this conversation and want to be a support system to them in advancing and living into their full potential, because it's a broader economic impact when we think about everybody living up to what they're capable of.
Yeah, I also think one of the most fascinating research I've ever read is the difference between when you invest in a man and you invest in a woman. Again, not taking anything away from men, but men tend to be more singular focused. They'll advance their own career. The moment that a woman advances, she thinks about advancing her significant other. She thinks about advancing her children. She thinks about advancing her team and her community. So it really lifts. There's been so many good studies done with angel investing in third world countries that it's really been fascinating. But I want to ask you about this this whole idea of fearing change. When you think about your books, when you think about the work that you do around the 7-minute pivot, how do you get people? Is it the baby step that starts to move them? Is it the asking why? Like, what makes them move out of the fear into action?
Yeah, I think it's a little bit based on what's driving the fear, right? But so for the person listening that says, I'm barely making ends meet, I am just trying to get by and keep up, that's where the 7-minute pivot can be so foundational, because you can find that amount of time. And here's what I love about it as well. Again, getting back to sort of the neuroscience of it, is some of us don't like to sit in our field. I'm one of those, right? I'd rather be in a happy mood. So I want to just work on past it and not have to live in that. So for me, the 7-minute pivot sort of forces me into 7 minutes of really being introspective about the thing that's either standing in my way or blocking me or what have you. There's other people that go on and on and on and sort of live in their field and can't get out of it. And they and sort of, it becomes all consuming.
Yeah.
For that individual, setting that alarm gives you, okay, now pick an action, do a baby step, and leave it and move on with your day. So I think, in that case, so I think part of it from the fear is the incremental baby steps that can be super helpful. The other part of it is getting underneath, and you know this from the work you do in change, is what is really the root fear that you're feeling? Is it failure? When it's that, we spend a lot of time really understanding what are your uniquely human gifts and talents. We can teach skill and knowledge.
Yeah.
I can't teach you to be a natural smiler. I can't teach you to be crazy creative or really amazingly strategic. Now you can mitigate some of that. You can slightly improve certain things, but I spend a lot of time trying to, and I discussed this in Now and You're Next, and I go deep on this in human capital investment strategy, is attract, select, and hire people for those uniquely human natural talents. Teach the skill and knowledge. And for the individual listening, what is the thing that makes your heart sing, that you do spontaneously, that you do better than most, and that it's consistent? Those are your natural gifts and talents. How do we help you do more of that and get paid for it? Because then the fear starts to come down, because it's like, well, yeah, I'm amazing at that. That comes easy. All right, well, let's find that space to live in instead of trying to climb the proverbial ladder. I like to say that, like a really great pair of shoes, careers can lure you in by they're sexy and they're shiny and they're cute. But if they don't fit, they're really uncomfortable. So you want to find that career and that aspirational next that makes sense for you. And then I think the fear starts to mitigate.
Yeah. So let's talk a moment about your new book coming out, Human Capital Investment Strategy. So where did the inspiration for that come from, and what is it that people tune into this book to really walk away and learn?
Yeah. So when my co-author and I came out with Now Near Next, one of the things, two things, many things emerged, but two things related to the question emerged. One is we had a lot of men in our audiences when I was keynoting that would say, "Love it, I'm all in. How can I be helpful?" Right. So I researched and then created a companion allyship guide that was really a supplement to that. The other thing that occurred to me as a longtime human resources professional is we don't have systems in place that create the kind of space for these women. So it's like, great, now we've got hopefully a movement of women who are being more intentional and looking up and looking forward. How do we create space organizationally where that makes sense to the leader, that it's more important that we're widening the net as we are attracting, selecting, developing, and promoting people? And that gets back to natural talent. And so what I found is in every organization I've been in or consulted with is everybody wants to say their people are their greatest asset.
Sure.
And they believe that, right? I don't think that they're being disingenuous. But then when push comes to shove, we don't really act on that. We that's when layoffs and cuts and everything else comes in, right? Because at the end of the day, we treat it as a labor expense, particularly in a movement with AI and technology, et cetera. We have such a profound opportunity as leaders, as CEOs, as CHROs, et cetera, to look at our human capital portfolios with the same rigor and intentionality and say, how can I find the best of the best on the non-teachable elements and then build the skill and knowledge? Well, that widens the net, right? And I use this, and this is being a little provocative, but if you have a interest in hiring a CEO and your job search says, I'm looking for a CEO who's been a CEO before for 15 years or more in a tech industry, right? And has been to some Ivy League school, right? And has a master's degree. Your pool shrinks and shrinks and shrinks and shrinks to where I basically have a handful of middle-aged white men that meet the profile.
Exactly.
Right. And with all due respect to middle-aged white men, big fan, that eliminates so many people out of the equation who may, from a talent perspective, be able to run circles around some of those individuals. So for me, it was the flip side of the same coin, which is women need to live into their potential. Companies and leaders need to build portfolios around human potential.
Yeah, and there's oh my gosh, I'm going to love really talking about that book, because I think there's so much there. I got hired in years ago. I was the first female executive into a company they'd ever hired, and my boss, I just think, was brilliant. I think I was hired because I was a female. I'm pretty sure of it, but he really needed one, and it was such a good balance, to the team. And I learned so much working from him, and he learned so much working from me. But we really came at leadership from very different perspectives, and learning from one another. And then the controversy we had, it was all just really, really good and healthy. So I think I love the fact that it's the flip of the coin, because it's going to take both sides to really, to really, really make it happen. But it's hard to believe we are at the end of this. We're at the end of this podcast, and I always like to end with two questions, Dr. Cynthia, and you can answer them in either direction. what is your best advice and your best tip as you think about, the coming year, that people can really move into this idea of asking for change, predicting what's coming, and feeling like they can use change as fuel rather than disruption? And then, of course, how do people get a hold of you? How do they follow you? How do they get on Amazon and order Now Near Next, look at the 7-minute pivot, and of course, set themselves up to buy Human Capital Investment Strategy?
Yeah, thank you. So my advice to the person listening, whether you're male or female, the person listening is start working on your future today. Do your day job with excellence, but identify your aspirational next. Put a date certain of when you would like that to come to fruition, and build a plan to get from now to near to next. Both and. There's a lot of unemployed people right now, layoffs, etc., that didn't have any kind of future planning. And I believe that my own experience, and for another day, is that really is the key to success and moving through change. So start working on your future today would be my challenge for every person listening. You can reach me on all the socials at Dr. Cynthia Bentzen-Mercer, and my website is CynthiaBentzen-Mercer.com. There you can pre-order Human Capital Investment Strategy. If you order it there, you get $728 worth of free content right out of the gate in advance of getting the book on February 3rd. So please see that. The 7-minute pivot is there with all kinds of free downloads, free prompts, a guide to help you on your 7-minute pivot. And then Now Near Next is available on Amazon or wherever books are sold. I'm available for furthering the conversation. I would love to chat with the person that's wondering what is next.
I love this. We'll make sure all those links are in the show notes. And I want to thank you for joining us today. I also want to thank the audience for joining us. It's been a fantastic conversation, and we look when your next book and your next set of ideas hit bookstores and hit the marketplace at a time that they are really going to need it. So again, thank you, Dr. Cynthia, and thank you, audience. We'll see you right back here next week for another episode of Ask for Change.